Hey everyone. So I'm about to head to my daughter's senior awards. Whoop whoop. But before I jump in the car, well, I'm technically in the car. I'm waiting on them to jump in the car. Um, I wanted to talk about shadow work. I've gotten some new people to my page. Yay! Hey y'all. And they're just not clear on what is shadow work and why is it important and what does it mean. So a little history lesson, not a lot because I'm not really down for that cause right now. When I have more time, we'll go into that. Um, Shadow work was first introduced by Carl Jung, and it's basically the hidden side of yourself. Um, so what does that mean for us today? It What does it mean to have a hidden side of you? So basically, it's like something or someone at some point in your life taught you that there was a part of you that was wrong, even if they didn't mean to. Sometimes it's intentional because it's a control thing, but oftentimes it's unintentional. Okay, so you take a piece of yourself that felt guilt or shame based on the judgment of either parents or teachers or friends or lovers, um, society in general, and you put that in a box and you place it aside in your mind and you say, that's not a part of me. Um, so, shadow work is about discovering the pain that caused you to hide a piece of yourself. Because ultimately, what ends up happening traditionally for most people is you hide so much of yourself that by the time you're in your 30s, you don't know who the hell you are because you've pushed away so much of your authentic self um, in an attempt to reach acceptance. That now you're you lack any feelings towards yourself and others, because you're kind of just a robot or a shell of a person kind of going through the motions. Okay. So why is shadow work important? Well, because shit, you deserve to be yourself, right? Like, um, let's talk about real quick when you haven't done your shadow work. Typically your emotions run you. Um, I am not of the school of thought that you're not supposed to feel emotions, that you're supposed to stay positive all the time. If that is your mantra, good for you, homie. This is not the channel for you. Um, I am of the school of thought that your emotions are meant to be felt. They're part of the human experience. And when you deny the emotions, all they do is throw a temper tantrum like a 5-year old and act out. And then what ends up happening is they spill over into parts of your life that typically are unrelated to why you're even feeling the emotion. So if you don't do your shadow work, and let's say you feel unheard as a little kid, um, typically you're that angry person. I'm really trying not to cuss so much in these videos. I mean, I don't mind cussing when we're talking person to person, but I guess my lives need to turn down a little bit. I'm not really being authentic then though. Um, so, let's say you felt unheard as a child. You definitely, if you don't do your shadow work, you're going to be that person that, like, when you're out in public, is like over the top about being heard and unnecessary responses. So, like, say somebody um, is in the Starbucks making coffee, putting a little cream in or whatever. I know it's pandemic right now, so we don't do that. But let's say it wasn't pandemic and that was happening. And then you want to put cream in your coffee. That person is not hurting you. That person probably doesn't even realize you're there. And instead of you just saying, excuse me, like a person that has done their shadow work, you proceed to cuss that person out. What makes you so special that you gotta have the whole counter? I bought coffee too. You just get to sit up here and take up the whole counter and I gotta wait for you. Right? Okay, that's a shadow work issue because let's be honest, you're not really reacting about that coffee or them being on the counter. It's an unreasonable over the top response. Where does that come from, right? Some people will say, well, I try to do my shadow work, but I have trauma from my childhood and it's too hard to go through. That's okay. I tell people there is no right or wrong way to do shadow work, but the most comfortable way is to go closest to furthest. Um, so what I mean by that is you may have um, you're trying to figure out why you feel so unheard in the coffee in the Starbucks, and you cuss that lady out. You realize you shouldn't have cussed her out. You don't know why you cussed her out. You're trying to figure it out, right? Then you go home and you shrink yourself so that your significant other can shine. When your significant other, talks about their needs or talks about the things they want or whatever, um, everything in your world stops. They hungry, you make them a plate. They can't find the remote, you stop working, you come help them find the remote. Whatever, like whatever you're doing, right? So start there and be like, I feel unheard because I don't exist within my own home at all, right? So start working there. Start making sure that you take up space in your home first. Then you can always move um, towards your childhood trauma. And it can be the slowest or fastest process. It's based on you and your comfortability. There is no level of you're going to be comfortable working through your trauma. It's more about being comfortable, being ready, right? So I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. And that usually comes from seeing the good results in the work you done first. So like I realize that I'm unheard in my home, and I realize that my significant other matters way more than I do, and that's unfair. Work on that first. Once you see that that is kind of changing things and you're feeling good about yourself and you're feeling empowered, and either that person's going to get with the program or they're going to kick rocks regardless. When you start to feel those things, they're kind of like building blocks of reassurance to keep going in your shadow work. And I think that that's really important. Like I know everybody's like, when I was growing up, daddy issues were a real thing, and that people talked about. And I think it's such a crappy thing to call it daddy issues. But I mean, the answer is, healing is a spiral, right? So like when you're healing, you start with, why can't I let this dude that I know doesn't value me go? Why can't I let him go? Right? And you may pull out the characteristics of him and realize that his characteristics as a person mirror, the absentee father in your life. um you may be 30, 35, 40, right? And you're like, wait, what? I don't want to let him go because subconsciously my body is set, my spirit, my body, my emotions, everything is telling me this is my dad, so I'm just trying to hold on to him. And obviously these are, I'm giving you a super summarized version of some very deep shadow work things, okay? Because I think it's important to touch on those things. You could touch on things like my mom never hugged me. You could touch on things, right? Like, I grew up poor. All of those things mold you to grow to find acceptance in other areas that make you not your authentic self. And the whole point of shadow work is to get you back to being who you were when you were little and you didn't care what people thought. Okay? And then grow that little person into a grown person who doesn't care what people think and just does what they need. Okay? And what they want. Um, so that is the whole reason why we need shadow work. So, again, healing is not linear. It's definitely spiral. You will come back. You'll say, this dude hurt me, this girl hurt me, this person hurt me. And then you may come back 2 years later on a deeper level. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm like over here on a deeper level, right? And you'll hit that thing again, boom, and it'll be like, but actually, it had to do with your uncle who used to talk shit about you at Thanksgiving and made you feel insecure. I mean, you may come back another time, a little further down in the spiral, and bam, it means something else. It doesn't mean that you didn't do the work the first time. It means you're going to the next level and you're digging and looking deeper into what is behind all of the reasons you do what you do. And are you honoring yourself in what you're doing? Or are you honoring the assholes from your childhood or whatever? I mean, you could do something like, I went to Catholic school. Why do I shrink myself at work? I feel like I need to speak up, and I keep shrinking myself at work, right? Why do I do that? And it could all go back to when you were in second grade. You had a nun at Catholic school tell you that, shh, 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 girls don't talk like that. Ladies don't act like that. Or you could have had a grandma that said to you, children are supposed to be seen and not heard, right? And you've been fighting that dynamic your whole life, but when met with confrontation, you fold. So, like, you may be a fighter when you feel like you're confident that nobody's going to fight you back. But then when you get in adversity, and real confrontation, you fold every time because you got that nun in the back of your head telling you that's not how you're supposed to act, right? Or you got somebody in the back of your head telling you you're dumb from when you were little. That all of those things play. So the the goal of shadow work is to basically accept these things as part of you. So when things happen to us, you can never, and I know this is going to sound awful and scary for anybody who's had trauma, but hear me out. You can never get over something. It is now a part of you. Okay? It just is. And it fucking sucks. And I'm sorry. I shitty things happen and they fucking suck. And you deserve to cry about it. You deserve to be able to say, I had a shitty childhood. It's okay. It's okay to say that. And it becomes a part of you. But once you accept it as a part of you, it doesn't control you. I'll give you a prime example. Okay? Eminem. Eminem is a prime example. His first raps, everybody's like, oh, he quit rapping about his mom and them because, she sued him. No, no, no. It's because you did shadow work. Think about it. He didn't care. When she sued him, he wrote that check. Okay. But then he realized it's not okay for you to have that emotion to control you, right? Your childhood is a part of you. It's not gonna leave. Your any relationship that hurt you, it's not gonna leave. But it shouldn't control you. It shouldn't be the driving force behind you, right? So think about it. He's got all this anger built up, right? So then he does his shadow work, right? But then how does he get that anger? Well, first of all, again, if it's a part of you, you can always channel it. So let's say you're a singer or a writer and you've been writing poems about your pain. And you're like, well, now that I've done my shadow work, I don't feel the need to write about it anymore. Now, either you don't feel the need to write about it anymore, or when you want to channel it, just know it's always there because it's a part of you now. You just don't feel it so intensely because it's not puppeting you around and controlling you. Um, so yeah, so shadow work is definitely needed so that you can be your true and authentic self. It's a big deal. I feel like I'm forgetting something I wanted to tell y'all. I left my notes in the house because I wasn't gonna do this till after my daughter's award assembly. Um, and it's a little hot in this car. Y'all see me wiping the sweat down. I should have cracked the window. Anyway, so shadow work is the real deal. It definitely it okay. One thing I want to say is shadow work will help you break generational curses, but it is not just about generational curses. So let me say that again. That's the thing I want to tell you. It's not just about generational curses. Can it break it? Yes. So I'll give you an example, right? My mom was a young mom. She had me, she was, I think, 22, about to be 23, okay, or just turned 23. I had my kid at 18, okay, my first kid. And then I had a bunch of other kids after that, okay? So by 22, almost 23, I had 4 kids, okay? That's a generational curse. A generational curse is when something was something happened and then the same exact things, so like your mother's a drug addict, so you're a drug addict. I didn't know who my biological father was, and my biological father didn't know who his biological father was. And then the truth set that free so that now there's no longer that generational curse on our family. You know, with my family, it was kind of the same thing. I, knock on wood, I have 4 adult children at this point, and none of them have brought home a grandbaby. Um, Not to say if they did, I'd be disappointed. I'm just saying that that's a generational curse. Okay. It is not a generational curse though when your parents you based on their trauma. So like if your mother was traumatized as a child and they were overbearingly protective of you and nervous about you being around adults they didn't know. That molded you, and it may have even affected you negatively, but that's not a generational curse. A generational curse would be she was traumatized and then you were traumatized. Do you see the difference? Um, so our parents' trauma, what we do as parents oftentimes is give our kids what we didn't have. And then that kind of perpetuates the need for shadow work because I'm not giving you what you need based on what you need. I'm giving you what my inner child needed, right? And then now as a grown up, I'm going back and realizing that there were holes in how I parented you because I was just trying to give you. So like if your parents didn't keep food in the house and you were always hungry, right? So like my mother grew up very poor and she grew up very hungry and in a household full of siblings when they were little with no food. I can tell you my entire childhood, I always had a fridge full of food. That was my mother's vow is her children will never be hungry. That was she was parenting me based on parenting her inner child. God bless her because I'm a thick, juicy girl and I like food. So I ain't mad. But it's the same thing. That's not a generational curse. A generational curse would be I grew up with 7 brothers and sisters in poverty with no food. That's a generational curse. So shadow work works in both breaking generational curses and figuring out how your parents' trauma affected your inner child, figuring out how your grandparents' trauma affected your inner child, and then hopefully changing the paradigm so that you can speak to the younger generation of your family so you can fill that gap and they have less shadow work to do than you did. Um, so yeah, so that's gonna be my shadow work in a box live for y'all. I'm about to get ready to jump because they standing outside looking at me funny. Um, Real quick, next week I have an ebook coming out on shadow work with some affirmations and journal prompts, and I have a shadow work masterclass that's going to dive deep into the hows, the whats, the highs, the lows, the cans, the cannots. And it's going to be amazing. So I hope to see y'all there. Just know anybody who's purchased a reading from me, they get early bird special into my shadow work masterclass. Okay. Once they've bought their tickets, then I give it to everybody else. So if you haven't booked a reading with me, you should so you can get on that reading list. Okay. I love y'all. Until next time. All right.